I'd like to call to order the regular council meeting for Tuesday, November 26, 2024. This meeting is being recorded live and is streaming on the District of Summerland YouTube channel. All representations to council, written or verbal, will form part of the public record and be available to the public for viewing electronically or as a written record. Corporate officer, any late items? No late items. If I get approval of the agenda, please. Councillor Betts, Councillor Barkwell, all in favor? That carries. Consent agenda. Would anybody like to remove anything from the consent agenda? Councillor Barkwell?
If I could, Your Worship, I'd like to pull the Development Services Report.
Okay, that's 4.5. Anything else? Okay, so that will go down to number 11. If I get a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended, Councillor Betts, Councillor Barkwell, all in favor, that carries. And going straight into my report. Since we last met, Councillor Barkwell and I attended 2 regular board meetings of the Regional District of Okanagan and Similkameen. On November 7th, the board reaffirmed Area A Director Mark Pendergraph as its chair and elected Penticton Councillor Campbell Watt as vice chair. It was also agreed at that meeting to hold an assent vote on April 12th, asking residents of the Vintage View subdivision in Heritage Hills to approve the regional district taking over operations of their wastewater and water systems from a private operator, and to borrow $7 million to upgrade the wastewater system and $13.5 million to upgrade the water system. The wastewater system is under a provincial pollution prevention order due to ongoing non-compliance with infrastructure repairs, sampling, and reporting. On the November 21st board meeting, the board received an organizational efficiency review that looked into the RDOS's departmental structures, reporting relationships, interdepartmental cooperation, workload management, corporate culture, use of resources and staffing levels, and recommendations were provided for both the CAO and the board, with the recommended increases to staffing levels to be considered as part of the budget process, which is just starting. The board also received the results of the 2024 regional survey that was conducted online between September 10th and October 4th. Responses were received from 327 residents from around the region, including 14 from Summerland. Healthcare, homelessness, water quality, and taxation were identified as the most important issues facing local government. Back on November 6th, I attended a meeting on making Summerland a more dementia-friendly community. The meeting was organized by the DB Foundation for Health Research and attended by several local residents living with dementia, as well as representatives from a wide range of community organizations, including the district's recreation department, social services agencies, Penticton Indian Band, Interior Health, Alzheimer's Association, some medical professionals, the business community, and faith-based groups. There was interest among the group to host a so-called memory cafe here in Summerland to act as a catalyst for reducing stigma and isolation and for determining what needs could be met through policy changes. Memory cafes have been held successfully in other communities in the region with the support of a RDOS grant and aid. On November 11th, I had the honor of attending the Legion's Remembrance Day dinner following the public ceremony at Memorial Park. Many thanks to the Royal Canadian Legion Summerland branch for continuing to organize such a moving and solemn Remembrance Day ceremony. Once again, the community came out in numbers to hear the rolls of honors of fallen Summerland soldiers and to pay their respects. It was noted that this year's ceremony could be the last for the cenotaph in its current form and location, as it's scheduled to be updated with an additional 31 names and relocated to a more prominent position as part of the Wharton Street and Memorial Park revitalization project. On November 15th in Penticton, a memorandum of agreement to protect water was signed by Silks chiefs and Okanagan mayors and regional district chairs. While I was unable to attend the signing ceremony, I have signed the document on behalf of council and participated in the drafting of the agreement through the collaborative leadership process over the past 18 months. It's my understanding that the collaborative leadership tables will continue as it has shown to be a positive forum for elected civics and local government leaders to come together to build trust and discuss issues of common concern that transcend jurisdictional boundaries. Finally, just a reminder, although I don't think anyone needs one, that Light Up is this Friday. The Festival of Lights goes from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. in beautiful downtown Summerland. Light Up the Arts starts today and runs until Christmas, and Light Up the Vines is on this weekend and next as well. The District of Summerland is pleased to support Destination Summerland / Chamber of Commerce and its partners to put on this marquee event for the community. And as our CEO isn't here, we don't have a CEO report. Mr. Delvit is acting CEO today. So we'll go straight into our delegations. I'll ask Allison Fox and Lindsay Hainsock of the Ministry of Agriculture to come on up. And I think we have some slides you can queue up for you, and I'll just turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Worship. Yeah, thank you for inviting us today to present quite an important topic, and I think Summerland has a fair bit of agriculture within the district and surroundings, so very pertinent here. We'll just talk a little bit about land use planning and agriculture, but a bit of context first about why agriculture is important. Some of the pressures on BC's farmland that we're seeing, some of the tools in the toolbox for local governments and the province to work together on supporting agriculture, and then some key messages and actions, and hopefully a little bit of time for discussion and questions. So why is agriculture important? It is a significant contributor to BC's economy, and it is continuing to be a growing sector. So the farm cash receipts are showing that with the continued increase up to 4.56 billion in 2022. These agricultural businesses support BC jobs and tend to be family businesses. And in 2023, approximately 40,000 people were employed across the province in primary agriculture. And food security is obviously becoming more important than ever. We're seeing a lot of global shocks to our food system that, you know, are just bringing that more to the forefront of people's minds, along with affordability issues and so on. So, as I said, the agriculture industry is an important contributor to the economy. If we look at employment by industry, it has jumped ahead of forestry and logging. And obviously oil and gas is still a pretty big component there, pretty big employer. But agriculture has shown some significant increases and has become quite an important employer for the province. And we can see the contribution here to GDP of how that breaks out in terms of animal production and crop production and supporting activities in this graph. And then the GDP by industry shows there again that agriculture has jumped ahead of forestry in recent years as being a significant contributor to the province's GDP. We also see that food and beverage processing as a support industry is important as well. So primary agriculture had sales of 14 billion, and then the food and beverage processing had sales of 11 billion, and those are 2020 and 2022 numbers. So some of the pressures on the agricultural land reserve and farming that we're seeing we're going to go through each one of these, but we are just seeing a lot of different pressures from a lot of different directions on our farmland. So we can see here, the first pressure is limited agricultural land. Only 5% of BC's land base is capable of agriculture, and it tends to be down in these valley bottoms where people also want to live. 54% of the ALR is crown land. We see a lot of that in terms of like crown rangelands and so on. One of the limitations we see with ALR that is in crown is just overlapping tenures, and so some of the different issues there, whether it's forestry or other sectors that might have overlapping tenures with agriculture, that can cause some pressures as well. And the cost of agricultural land is tied in partially to the limited supply, but also the fact that people want to live in these valley bottoms, and we see the cost continuing to increase as a result. So increased by 8% in 2022. And BC's farmland values are the highest in Canada. The Okanagan, this is from the Farm Credit Canada Farmland Values Report that they do annually. And we see up to 107,000 per acre on average. However, locally, we do actually see higher prices than that, and can be substantially higher prices. But so a little bit of comparison, Ontario farmland values range between 4,000 and 28,000. So it's a significant difference here. We did see a decrease in the Okanagan over the last year, which is likely due to interest rates and inflationary pressures. But that's not necessarily a trend that we expect to see continue, just because there is a limited supply and increased demand as the agriculture sector is growing and as people are looking to use agricultural land for lifestyle purposes or hobby type businesses as well. So third pressure is a significant one, which is urbanization. So we're continuing to see populations grow, and an obvious need for more urban infrastructure as more people move to the province. And the Okanagan Valley has been identified as one of 3 significant high growth regions. And these 3 high growth regions in the province, Lower Mainland and the island as well, are where 80% of BC's total farm receipts are generated. So we have a couple slides here on the housing demands, but we all know that the prices are continuing to go up and affordability is declining, and that BC is the most unaffordable province for housing. And we're seeing some pressure on the ALR there as well, while people look to solve the housing crisis. So the Agricultural Land Reserve is a provincial zone that is to hold land in reserve for agriculture. And so if food security and the economic benefits of agriculture are priorities, the ALR cannot be a solution to BC's housing crisis. And there's just multiple issues associated with people living in farming areas. So within the Ministry of Agriculture, we do try and look towards those and look for solutions, whether that's buffering or footprints on ALR land to help with those. We'll talk a little bit about that again later. Demographics is an issue for the agricultural industry, just because the average age of farmers in Canada continues to increase, and there's fewer people getting into farming and fewer young people able to afford farmland. So we're seeing the age of farmers increase and the number of young people getting into farming decrease. BC does have the highest proportion of female farmers in Canada, though, and that's a metric that we are seeing increase across the country. Lack of industrial land is also a pressure. Often people where there is a lack of industrial land in communities, people are looking towards farmland to solve that problem. Some areas of the province, we are seeing a critical shortage of industrial land and rising costs associated with that limited supply as well. We have also seen some local governments redeveloping their industrial lands to other uses whether that's housing or like commercial retail type uses. And so that puts more pressure on industrial land and then a knock-on effect of more pressure on the ALR as well. So some tools in the toolbox for local governments. Under the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, now we have the Local Government Act, which allows local governments to set up agriculture advisory committees, which Summerland has, agriculture area plans, just looking to support agriculture within official community plans and zoning bylaws, development permit area guidelines, particularly the development permit area for protection of farmland. And then under the Ministry of Agriculture and Food, we also have jurisdiction there, which is to develop minister's bylaw standards, which guide local governments in developing bylaws that are supportive of agriculture. We also administer the Farm Practice Protection Act, and along with the BC Farm Industry Review Board. And we also engage in agricultural land use inventories so that we have a clear understanding of how the agricultural land base is being used across the province. And that's been a pretty big undertaking, and we've been able to go back into some areas now and start looking at trends as well. And then the Agricultural Land Commission administers the Agricultural Land Commission Act and regulations, and they develop policies as well to provide their interpretations of those acts and regulations and some operational policies as well. So there's some key messages here is that there are these competing demands for a limited agricultural land base. And there's challenges for farmers are growing. We see that especially with the last few years here with drought has been particularly challenging for farmers. Drought and then some other climate challenges like the freeze-thaw cycles that we've had over the past couple of years. So ensuring that we have food security in the province means that we need to have a land base that's available for the sector, and that protecting it and ensuring that it's functional, it requires a cooperative effort between the province and local governments. And local governments have done a lot to support agricultural land and the farmers in their communities. And so we look forward to that continuing in the future. So some further key actions is just that to look within your jurisdiction to see what you can do to further support farmers in your communities. One of the big things that we're seeing is ensuring buffers and a stronger edge between urban areas and agricultural areas. As land use intensifies on both sides of that boundary, it is critical to ensure for both the quality and lifestyle of residents to be able to not be impacted by farm practices, and then for farmers to not be impacted by issues such as trespass and vandalism and so on. And so just coordinating across the region as well. One of the things that we're hearing was where farms are split across different jurisdictions, where they might have parcels. The farm might be made up of parcels in different jurisdictions. It can be difficult to navigate when there's a multitude of different regulations to that they need to abide by. So just ensuring some consistency across boundaries there is important. And then recognizing that the smaller the lot, the more it sells for there's a premium on small lots. There's higher demand for small lots. So if you have larger parcels, to try and keep those intact. Small lots are also less likely to be farmed. And we see that as a consistent trend throughout the province through our agricultural land use inventories. And then just recognizing the cumulative impact that non-farm uses can have on the agricultural land reserve and the ability for it to be farmed as well. So with that, we can take some questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, any questions? Councillor Barkwell and Councillor Peak.
I've seen in the past where someone who has agricultural land in the ALR has exchanged it by an agreement where somebody else would put land into the ALR, some equivalent. It might not be acre for acre, but there's sort of a trade. Is there an official policy on that, whether you support those sort of trades, or is it a case by case basis with no policy applying, or what? Or are they discouraged?
Yeah, so that would require an application to the Agricultural Land Commission. So they are separate from the BC Ministry of Agriculture. So they administer the Agricultural Land Commission Act independently from the Ministry of Agriculture. And so I can't speak to what they might do for a specific type application, but what you're speaking of would require an exclusion application and an inclusion application. And individual landowners are not able to make direct applications to the Agricultural Land Commission for that type of thing any longer. So, so I think there's been, it's not to say that there wouldn't necessarily be support if there was a certain circumstances that would make that a favorable situation, but there's probably less support for that than what there might have been in the past, just because of the changes to the act. So,
Councillor Peak.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Mayor. I have several questions, if it's okay to make a little string of them. I noticed that one of the slides is how local government can help BC agriculture through land use planning. Our district is extremely proactive in this way and have been for many years. I wasn't on council when I came on council, when I wasn't and came back. My question would be, and you would, as the Ministry of Agriculture and Food, support the things that are necessary to keep the ALR in good shape and productive and available. Do you also recommend policies to the province that would intend for the same circumstances to be able to stay in place? So you're asking for the support of the local government. How do you support the local government to the province for the same reasons?
Yeah, so we are from the Ministry of Agriculture and Food. So yeah, it's just some of the tools that have been outlined there. So we do develop the guide for bylaw development in farming areas, for instance, to help local governments develop bylaws that are supportive of farming. And then, yeah, things like our guide to edge planning fall under that bracket as well. Yeah, we have been trying to increase awareness of agriculture, so with presentations like this, and then also we have traditionally done things like a agricultural study tour at the Union of BC Municipalities. So we are trying to increase awareness and also have some tools available. So the development permit areas for protection of farming were put into the Local Government Act as part of the suite of legislation that we operate under. So yeah, there's a variety of things, but like, obviously, if people have ideas too, we're open to listening to those.
Good, because this council has presented for group discussion at UBCM about the fact that we require taxes, greater taxes on the ALR land. And we look to the province because the province decreed the ALR land. And we believe that they should be able to support the infrastructure money that municipalities have to spend within those ALR lands, which will provide us taxes to do so. And the only one that could do that is the province. And we would hope that the Ministry of Agriculture and Food would be able to support that, because that would allow us to a greater broadband of support for our ALR land.
Yeah, so I can't speak to taxation policy. I'm a land use hydrologist,
I realize that.
yeah.
But you know, when you come to us and say you want the support from us, we're saying we need the support from you when those things come through. So I really want to identify it to you. I understand your limitations in terms of how you work, but I just wanted to identify that. The other thing I wanted to ask,
Sorry, Councillor Peak, could I just add to your point
Certainly.
there? So just follow on Councillor Peak's point. For every $1 in taxation we collect from class 9 or 8 farmland, it costs us $2 to service that land, which means that it's our support of agricultural land is on the back of our residential taxpayers. We don't have an industrial base here to speak of. So that's we don't really consider that fair. Because other residential taxpayers and in urban areas aren't having to burden this, but our residential taxpayers are. And every time we try to talk to the province about this, we're bounced between the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Municipal Affairs, and Ministry of Finance. Nobody wants to deal with. Nobody even wants to talk to us about it. So it's kind of it's become quite frustrating.
Yeah.
And we just like the province the different ministries to talk with each other.
Yeah, and we do talk with each other and we do bring these issues up. I understand there have been meetings with people more senior than myself with the District of Summerland on this issue. So I wouldn't necessarily say that we don't listen. We have listened and we have taken those issues back to the relevant people. So I think, there is discussion that happens on these issues. It's a matter of, where that needs to go to and what solutions have been offered to you in the past. As I say, I'm not that department. I'm not I'm on the land use planning side and not so much on the taxation side. So I'm really not party to a lot of that discussion, but I mean, certainly I can take that back to my supervisor after today and let it be known that that is still an issue here.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Peak, and then Councillor.
Thank you very much for your clarification, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your time in speaking to that as well. I had a question. I don't know the Farm Practice Production Act, but I know that we strongly support a food hub here. And I know that in terms of production for GDP, that if we had more R&D, if we had more production of food in the areas that it's produced in, that would also help. Now, does the Farm Practice Production Act contribute to those kind of things?
No, the Farm Practice Production Act is about nuisance. So it's about farm practices that are protected from nuisance bylaws and nuisance complaints.
But is there a way that you do support that kind of food production from the ALR land?
Well, there's certainly, I think there's a different branch within the ministry that has, supported programs such as Buy BC and, as you say, the food hubs and getting more processing happening in communities. So there have been programs, yes.
One more.
In terms of the production of on the land, so we notice that there are people owning land, but not the ones that are farming it, so they contract out. Is there any background work to understand whether this is better or less good in terms of the production on the ALR land? Or do you have any stats on that?
I don't have any stats with me today on that. I mean, it's certainly a model that we see. I mean, it certainly is one way to get the land farmed, is to have these incentives for it to be leased to farmers. And one way that happens is through the farm classification system. So yeah, I don't know. Look to my colleague Lindsay if you want to. Yeah.
Do I switch chair? Hi there. Sorry, I was sitting in the background. So Lindsay Hainstock, work as a regional agrologist. I sit on your agriculture council. Thank you. Be awkward. I guess to backtrack a bit on your other question as well, that is part of the role I would play as a regional agrologist, as well as that extension part of our ministry, is so working with producers, their organizations, to try and take that research that gets out there in the world and make it more applicable to our producers, and how can we help them be more productive that way. Getting back to in terms of how we support farmers with production. Yeah, I guess I was kind of on your side with, that's where we try to define what is a farmer when they're looking at BC assessments, what is a farm? Those are just things to encourage farm practices that are actually meeting that production quota. And then what were you looking for? The land base.
Leasing or versus owning.
Right, thank you. We are working with that, and that is always a challenge with people. I think it's a lot of the times it's just working on an individual basis with people trying to see the value in using the land for those purposes. I can't really say that there's official policies to deal with that, but it's more just that's our role, trying to work with people and trying to get them to, make the best use of their land. I think it mostly benefits everybody when they do so. Yeah.
Councillor Trainer.
I just have a quick follow-up with regards to what Mayor Holmes and Councillor Peak said. Farming in Summerland, as you know, is a really big part of our identity. And we want to be able to keep it that way. And so just again, building on what they said, every time we go to the province, we do ask for support, since the ALR is a provincial initiative and Summerland carries a lot of that weight. What we are ultimately looking for is perhaps a grant or something like that would allow us to support our infrastructure and continue to support our ALR lands as well. It's just really difficult to do that on our own without support. So that's what we continue to ask for. And I realize you guys don't deal with that, but just that's the kind of struggle that we're really facing right now. And so that's just a comment. And then secondly, you said that agriculture was larger in terms of production than forestry. Is that right? Does that include cannabis and alcohol as well in your totals?
14 million?
No. No, so that wouldn't include the alcohol or the cannabis.
So does it include wine or growing cannabis?
I don't believe, when we usually, for the Ministry of Agriculture,
That's farm gate receipts.
yeah. And so that's exactly what I was going to say.
It's
So it would
food
be
then.
more the grape sale to produce that wine would be what it would look at.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was surprised to hear that. So yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. It was really good.
You're welcome. I guess I was just going to speak one thing. We certainly are starting to look at more of that collaborative effort in terms of where the funding goes with some of these things. And so one of them I can think of where we're starting to see stuff like this is there is an agricultural water infrastructure program right now with funding that municipalities certainly can tap into with those sorts of projects. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Betts.
Thank you for your presentation today. I think that our community is clearly very passionate about agriculture. And I mean, that's obviously we've got lots of great food producers, we have great producers, this is a huge part of our economy. And I think that that's what I would like to kind of zero in on, is that being that this sector of the provincial economy is larger than forestry, and that's not even including, potentially not even including cannabis or alcohol product sales, which then puts it into the billions of dollars in terms of its the number of people working in this part of the economy, the amount of money going into the provincial coffers, which of course we all pay for. We're all part of that. Sometimes I feel that we get a little too, well, no, that's all. It's us. We're all part of it. But my question is, I don't perceive agriculture as a priority of the government, of the current provincial government. And so in light of these statistics that are showing that it's actually a significant contributor to our economy, do you see that changing? Food security is ever more important. We're having more and more climate related challenges, but I see it as increasing in importance, and that communities like ours require support to help support the ALR. And that comes from the province and from departments like yours. But I don't currently see it as a priority of the provincial government. And I'm just wondering how that can change, or if you can speak to that at all.
We're also still waiting for a mandate letter.
Yeah.
That'll be a fair question.
Yeah, we do have a minister now, but we don't have, as Lindsay said, we don't have a mandate letter. One of the things that we have seen is that we do also have a parliamentary secretary now for agriculture, who is the MLA for Vernon-Lumby. So yeah, who knows? Keep your eyes on this space, because I think, yeah, we might see, particularly for Okanagan agriculture. Who knows? Yeah.
Would you be able to provide us more information on this agricultural water infrastructure funding? And specifically, in our case, what we're trying to do is, it's a bit by bit process. It's taken a long time, but is to twin our water mains, as you probably know, so that we're not using treated water from the water treatment plant to irrigate. And I'm just wondering if something like that might fit into this.
I'm certainly willing to take, if you want, we can discuss, get into really good details beyond this. But where I'd encourage people to look is right now, this is being administered through the Investment Agriculture Foundation. So you just look up the AWP program on their website, and it'll have the full list of what funding has been available. Right now, it's the Stream 3 component that's open. So this would be looking at doing all that foreground work of getting the engineering reports, those sorts of studies done. So there is that component open right now. Again, with our ministry right now, we're kind of in limbo. I can't predict what the future funding is going to look like, but they do still have the information that you can look up to see what has been done with Stream 1 and 2 in the past for that funding. And that's where it kind of ranged, depending on those with individualistic projects for individual producers versus the municipality level. So, but happy to discuss once we get those re-released. Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I have one other thing I like to ask. I don't really see it in here, but one thing where local governments are very involved in is ALC compliance. Our bylaw officer working with the ALR compliance, working with the LSC. And there's always a bit of friction there, I think, in terms of we feel that they rely on us too much to do compliance, where we're not really set up. We don't have really any more capacity than the ALC does. And so I'm just wondering, like, what's the ministry's view in enforcing compliance, ALR compliance? Is it you just leave it to the ALC? Is it something you expect municipalities to be involved in and that we sort it out? I mean, obviously, there's not enough either way. No matter who's doing it, there's obviously not enough money there for enforcement. But I'm just wondering what the ministry's perspective is on that.
Yeah, I think it is a very important piece, and I think we have seen over time that the ALC has ramped up enforcement, going back to 2004 when there was nothing from the ALC as far as enforcement at all, and fully relying on local governments to enforce, to now where they do have enforcement officers around the province. Obviously it's still they have a tremendous caseload and it's, still not enough based on the compliance issues that we see. And that's why they do rely on working in partnership with local government compliance and enforcement to be able to, whether that's as far as bringing issues forward or working in tandem. The other issue is that the Agricultural Land Commission currently doesn't have the ticketing abilities that local governments have, which is one of the more critical things in order to really get that compliance happening. So it is an issue that we're aware of within the Ministry of Agriculture. And it was certainly on the minister's radar during our previous minister's radar during the last term. So as we say, we'll have to wait and see how that's all going to play out in the future, but it's certainly something that is on the ministry's radar.
Well, it should be easy enough to change, just give them the authority. Anybody else? No? Thank you very much. Very informative. Appreciate you coming.
Thank you for having
Thank
us.
you. Our second delegation is Summerland Rotary. Connie.
How about this? Thank you for having us again. And this is probably the last time we'll be here on this particular topic. So before we get started, I would like to just introduce the Rotarians that we have with us here this afternoon, a bunch of hardworking folks. Maybe just raise your hand. I've got a list here, so raise your hand when I call your name. Brenda Hamilton, Gary Hollingshead, Doug Carnegie, Michael Jang, Les Bro, Paul Barber, and Bob Van Balcom. So I'm just really pleased that they've been able to come. This is a big day for us because, as you know, it was 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago, that we came before you with the idea of a partnership between Mayor and Council and the Summerland Rotary Club. And in our presentation back then, we hoped that you would allow us to help you to engage our community in ways that would bring folks together around a common vision and a shared goal. And that goal, of course, was replacing the pier that was no longer safe with an even better one, with enhancements that would be funded by the community. And we're grateful that your response back then was a resounding yes. And so now that we know that in government, things usually work very, very slowly. But that wasn't the case with you guys and the pier. You managed to very quickly take down the pier that could no longer be used and build a wonderful new one, despite the mussels that needed to be protected in their timetables. So that was remarkable. I think we were all surprised at how quickly that happened. But on reflection now, I think Summerland Rotary Club did engage the community, and the community did come together around that shared goal and that common interest. So folks participated in and donated and supported the golf tournament that we held. A couple of 50-50 draws had the record high responses, and people opened their wallets. And a lot of Summerlanders and people who love Summerland gave donations as well. And there's something that I didn't really expect. I know I talked to Brenda about this morning, and she did expect it. But a number of families who lost loved ones reached out to us. And some of those loved ones passed after living long and full lives, while some tragically left us way too soon. These families have chosen to donate to enhancements to the pier, which is a joyful place of laughter and life and beauty. And so they've chosen to contribute so that they can, that's part of the healing process. So what a lovely way to remember someone, the laughter of children playing on the pier and so on. So here we are wrapping up this amazing project. and including the check that was blank. When we took the photo earlier, you can see that the check was blank, but what we can commit to is over $200,000 that we've raised as a community and as the Summerland Rotary Club towards enhancements to the pier. I've been working with Lori and I've been discussing the sort of the plans as they've been emerging with the Rotary Club, and they're in support of that. We will be looking at putting 10 plaques on the pier and 5 large, 5 small on benches. So it's not a lot. And the large plaques will be only, 7 inches tall because that's the width, depth, height of the top rail, and then 10 inches long. So it's not going to be a lot. There's going to be only 10 in total, including the 5 on the benches. So we're just going through the process of getting all the I've got half of the wording for the plaques here that I was going to leave with Lori. But anyway, it's been an exciting project. We're thrilled that that the community has come together, and we're thrilled with the support of people in this wonderful place that we call home. So if that's it, unless you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. That's amazing. That's great. Was that your target? Did you have a target?
We didn't have a target because we really didn't know. But something surprised me. Like, we sort of thought we'd sell planks, which didn't really sound right because you guys paid for the actual planks and, you actually built the base structure. So that, I guess it didn't seem sincere to ask people to, sponsor a plank, whereas sponsoring a bench is something that, yes, we're adding we'll be adding the benches, we'll be covering the benches. So it was really hard to know. I mean, some people, for me, I was hoping at minimum 200,000 at minimum. I thought we could go higher, maybe, and maybe there will be something down the line. We don't have enough money for a shade at this point, but maybe something will come up in the community down the line that we can afford to do that. But the things that we are adding are subtle. For the most part, and I think Lori will update you on as plans emerge on that. So
great. And and you can work with Lori about the plaques as well. Yes. Councillor Trainer.
Connie, can people donate still? If you said the shade hasn't been funded, there's not enough money for that yet, but can people still give to the Rotary as part of this project? Closing it.
Well, I think we're closing it at this point. If somebody wanted to take up the idea of a shade structure, because it's really expensive. Like that was like, oh gee, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of dollars for the shade structure. So it would be a whole new campaign that somebody would want to get behind. I think for now we're closing off on this, but we do have enough in there, maybe depending on how things wind up. And I've discussed this at a Rotary meeting, that if there's money left over, there's the entrance there. It looks really not very nice. It's not very appealing. And so that if there is some money left over, we can start to enhance that area that sort of bridges the Rotary Beach with the pier, and the entrance. So if there's some money left over, it won't go to waste.
That's a really good idea. Congratulations on raising 200,000. That's a lot of money for a small town. And I think it speaks to the credibility and the trust that Rotary has in Summerland. I think people really respect you and your group. And so that's awesome that you did that. So well done.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Pete.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I too really want to express the appreciation that I felt as a councillor to have our marvelous Rotary Club, who support so many wonderful things in Summerland, take this project on, and to see it celebrated by $200,000 of generosity from the community, I think is fabulous. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, that's great. Yeah,
Appreciate
thanks
that.
for the great news.
And thank you very much for letting us come and share the good news today. I think we might be sneaking out.
Talk to the
we're sneaking
Herald guy right behind you. He'll probably want to do a story on that.
His what, sorry?
He'll probably want to do a story on that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to the public comment period. Any members of the public Don't see any, so now we'll move. Oh, sorry. Okay. Which agenda item do you want to? speak? Nine-
Dog
9.4?
licensing fee.
Okay.
Whatever. Okay. Simone Kudos, 13514 Prairie Valley Road, Summerland. Thank you very much. Staff want to increase licensing fees because of substantial.
Sorry, we just need your name and address for the
I did,
record.
but I spat it out so fast. I
Oh,
was
really?
nervous.
Okay,
I'll do
No,
it again.
I think we got it. We're fine.
Simone Kudos,
Yeah.
13514 Prairie Valley Road, Summerland.
Perfect, thanks.
Okay. Staff want to increase licensing fees because of substantial investments to support dog owners. The district really can't take credit for our new dog parks because they fought tooth and nail against them for so many years. All credit must go to the Summerland Dog Owners Association, who finally made it all happen. So what exactly is this substantial investment by the district? Our dog parks don't contain expensive playgrounds, outdoor fitness equipment, baseball diamonds, etc. They're basically fields surrounded by a fence. Staff also want dog owners to help cover construction of these parks and additional operational costs. Using that same logic, the district should have fees in place for everything in Summerland, including all beaches, bike paths, playgrounds, sports fields, etc. It doesn't make sense. The licensing fee is already a hardship for people who can barely afford the price of groceries, let alone pet food and vet bills. Increasing fees hurt our low-income families, lonely seniors, and single people who rely on the companionship of their pets for mental and physical well-being. In closing, I hope that council considers these people. $30 or $40 probably isn't a lot for people that can afford it, but it makes a world of difference for people that are just scraping by. Thank you very much.
Perfect, thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to our business items. This is, got our first responders hour coming up here. So first up will be the BCHS.
Sorry.
Yeah.
In the operation.
Oh, okay, that's all good. Yeah, we understand.
It's on or? Now we're on. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I appreciate the chance to sit down with Mayor and Council Summerland and present BCEHS's operational overview for the last year. So this is not a change from last year. These priorities haven't changed. So for anybody who was present for the last presentation, I will skip through these slides relatively quickly and get to the meat of what you're looking for, which is the operational output. Staffing model hasn't changed. You still have a full-time 24/7 paramedic unit staffed just down the block, as well as a part-time unit that's staffed with on-call members. So this is the calendar year, and unfortunately, our calendar year runs January to December as opposed to the fiscal year, and so sometimes that makes the statistics a little bit difficult to comprehend. But you'll notice that these numbers are not different from last year, and so I had to follow up with our data people, and the outcome of that conversation is that there's actually a 10% increase year over year. So it's closer to 1,600 calls as opposed to 1,450. So I will send you the amended numbers when I am in receipt of them. And interestingly, the call volume month to month is particularly static, around 10% increase. So we're not getting more calls in the summer or less calls in the winter. We're getting more calls just year round. I think which probably aligns most closely with population growth. And there's also some consideration around the fact that We had a reduction in traffic coming to the South Okanagan for a majority of the year based on the rock slide, and actually made an impact in our call volume in the Penticton area. So I'm sure it impacted you as well. This is, again, last year's data. It's your community. You'll notice the highest call volume timing is still roughly 10 a.m. And then repeated again roughly around 1800, so 6 o'clock in the evening. And that really aligns with, unfortunately, most people wake up in the morning a little bit late. Maybe they weren't feeling well overnight, and they call 911 because they're still not feeling well by about 10 o'clock in the morning. So we see the majority of our calls around that time. It's also a perfect time for kids to fall off trees, the school yard, etc. So again, these numbers are call volumes year over year, and you'll be able to note the consistent numbers until we got to COVID. And then obviously there is a spike in call volume, and then that's come down just a little bit since then, but has now gone back up again. So you'll 24-25 is not there yet because, again, the fiscal versus the calendar year. But as soon as it's posted, you will note that it's getting close to almost 4,000 calls again. So we're starting to move in the direction that we had previously moved away from, just in terms of total overall volume. And these are just specifically calls in the Summerland district. They don't include when Summerland is tasked to support Penticton and or Peachland. That's it. Quick, simple. Yeah, questions?
Yeah, thank you very much. Council, any questions? I was just wondering about recruitment of staff. Has that become an issue for you?
It's an issue across the healthcare. Health Human Resources remains one of our kind of wicked problems. We continue to struggle with not only recruitment of individuals, so seats and bums, as they say, or bums and seats, depending on how you look at it. We also struggle with recruiting license level. So there is a significant amount of training and education that's required for the higher license levels. And we find that those license levels tend to cohort around urban areas. And so enticing them into a rural and remote setting, and recognizing Summerland is not considered rural, and it's very close to not being considered remote anymore. Or sorry, it's not remote, and it's close to being considered not rural anymore. Your population is getting close. And you're close enough to a medical facility in Penticton that you are outside of the Health Canada's definition of a rural and or remote scenario. We still find it difficult to recruit to these parts of the world. And then when we do recruit, we face the issue associated with skill, competence, and maintenance, right? So confidence and competence as it relates to they're called halo events, or high acuity, low occurrence. It's exceedingly difficult to maintain in a low call volume area. So those two pieces align to make it difficult to not only recruit, but also retain staff in these areas. And we see Summerland in particular as an area that tends to recruit new individuals into the service. They stay for a small period of time, and then they move to a large and urban center, mostly Kelowna, sometimes Penticton and or Vancouver. So it's an issue across the service outside of the large areas. There is work going on in the background around ways in which to address that. And then more globally, healthcare in general is looking at ways to address that across the skill set, whether it's the physician group or allied health or nursing.
So the Health Canada definition of rural and remote, is that based on distance to a hospital?
Distance to a hospital and population density. And actually, there's a couple of different definitions that they use. The one that I like the most is the non-definition definition, which I call the coffee definition. So if you live in an area with a Starbucks, you're considered urban. If you live in an area with a Tim Hortons, I will consider you rural. And if you live in an area with only an A&W or the corner store, then you are remote. It's the one that most people identify with.
Well, we're rural then. We don't have a Starbucks.
But you do have a Tim Hortons, so you're covered.
And also, is it easier or more difficult? Is there any difference at all between full-time paramedics and casuals?
Yes, significant difference. Full-time paramedics draw obviously full-time salary with the benefits package, provided with vacation, et cetera, sick time, all of those things that come with full-time work. And casual on-call staff are simply paid for the time that they are present at the station.
But in terms of recruitment, so it's easier to recruit full-time.
We have challenges in our workforce strategy around the difference between full-time and casual as it relates to unionization. And so it is hard to recruit into full-time directly. Most individuals enter into the service through a casual route and then apply or post into a full-time position once they've accrued some seniority.
So would a casual paramedic have some other job that they would normally be doing?
Generally speaking, that is correct, yes.
And do we have any casual paramedics who are also paid on call firefighters? I don't know, maybe Chief.
I don't know, Chief.
We don't have any in Summerland, but I know other jurisdictions do. We have one member here, but he's in Greenwood. So he's not available to us when he's on shift.
Thank you.
No worries.
Councillor Peak?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. When you say that people will often stay in our kind of a community and then move to something larger, does the cost of housing or that have anything to do with where people move?
Yeah, it's a complex issue. Housing is one of the pieces associated with the decision to move. Access to career opportunities within the service itself is another one. Interestingly, rural communities tend to attract new to entry to practice paramedics, and then we'll call them close to retirement. So seasoned medics who are looking for a slightly slower pace. And that's that middle portion where there's that career stacking, et cetera, that tends to attract individuals into the urban centers where there's more opportunity.
Thank you very much. That gives me a little better understanding, and I appreciate your presentation.
Yeah, Councillor Barkle.
First of all, I'm really surprised that there's a difficulty recruiting to our beautiful community, but such as it may. I would think that an important metric would be response time. How many minutes to, average minutes to a call. I don't know how you keep that sort of statistic, but do you have that? Well, you must have that. I mean,
We do. I would have to look up the specifics related to this district, but on average, we stratify the calls based on acuity, and then we assign a color to them. So purple calls are the most serious and acute calls. They usually encompass things like cardiac arrest, drowning or near drowning, penetrating trauma, et cetera. And then red calls, and then orange calls, and then yellow, and down you go to all the way to teal. Each of those colors has a time attached to it in terms of optimal response. And so for reds and purples, which are our most serious calls, our response time optimally is under 9 minutes. And I can get you the statistics, but I suspect that Summerland's very close to meeting that target most often. We don't have the traffic issues. There's a unit generally available in quarters. We have strong support from fire. So generally speaking, unless we are going a distinctly long distance, and there are some very rural spots in this part of the world, we would most likely meet those targets. But I can track down that information for you if it's important.
well, you sort of went where I was leading to, is that how are we doing? And you sort of, informally said, we're meeting the standard in Summerland for residents. I guess I can take from that there's no issues really at this time.
Not that I'm aware of, but given that I'm being quoted on the record, it would be important to ensure that data actually supports that comment. So the reason for the hedge is not because I don't think we're going in the right direction. It's because I don't have that data in front of me to support that assumption. So I'm happy to find that data and provide it to you. I just don't have it with me today.
Okay, don't see any further questions. So thank you very much, Mr. Sandler. Thank you. Next up, Corporal Hall, RCMP.
Thank you, Your Worship. Bear with me, I just found out some disturbing news. I'm just trying to process that at the same time, juggling this as well as being on duty. So, thank you, Council, and Mr. Mayor, through the Mayor. I'd just like to address the Q3 stats for Summerland. I'm very happy to report in a number of areas. I believe I provided the stats to the CAO earlier in the month. I don't know if a copy was provided to everybody. Oh, excellent. Thank you. Summerland continues to enjoy a reduction in the majority of crime. Violent crime continues to be reduced. Violent crime, sex offenses, and anything intimate partner violence and violent crime overall has seen a dramatic reduction from this time last year, 48%. We also continue to enjoy reduction in other property crimes such as residential B&Es, thefts, and theft from vehicle went down from 10 to 9. So a reduction of 10%, we'll celebrate that. What we do see, though, on these stats is the elevation of property crime in the areas of auto theft, bicycle theft, as well as an overwhelmingly large number with fraud. You can see it went up from 9 to 25 with an increase of 178%. And I can speak to that in a moment. I will have you know, though, that the figure doesn't sit well with me. It's quite disturbing, but it's also it's understood where it's happening, why it's happening. With regards to property crime overall, we did have some success in investigations and arrests last quarter. We arrested, in conjunction with the Chilliwack RCMP, a multi-jurisdictional crime group that came through the Okanagan. For the most part, was conducting the majority of break-and-enters and theft from autos and whatnot. They were arrested in Chilliwack in possession of a lot of property from people and vehicles that were attributed to Summerland as well as throughout the Okanagan. We've had some success with respect to a little bit of deterrence and whatnot through public education, but with respect to our investigations into those offenses, they're continuing, and charges have been forwarded to Crown Council. Majority of property crime I can speak to within Summerland appears to be the crimes of opportunity, and we've tried a bit of a public media campaign educating the public once again not to leave keys in their vehicle because it's incredibly easy to steal a truck if you leave the key in it. Wallets, etc., wallets, passports, items of that kind of stuff being left in the vehicle along with laptops or anything that's easily movable and easily resold. Again, with coming back to bikes, again, the crimes of opportunity where bikes are left ground floor of an apartment building or in the backyard or in the front yard stored overnight, thinking, yes, Summerland is a safe community, but we're not immune to traveling criminals that come through, steal a vehicle, and then may go steal a couple of bikes and whatnot and sell them and go from there. With respect to frauds, the majority of frauds, over 60% of the frauds that we did experience were internet-based frauds. And a lot of this is from overseas. They're incredibly difficult to investigate, if not impossible, because we have to have reciprocal agreements with those countries to be able to investigate them. And a lot of them come from third world countries where no agreements exist. So we've taken the approach of education is going to be more effective than just flat out investigating them because we don't get the cooperation from police forces abroad. So we have started a campaign for education. It ebbs and flows. It comes and goes. And a lot of the victims in these happen to be seniors and are more vulnerable groups. Which is exactly who these fraudsters tend to target. And so we find that in retirement homes and nursing homes and whatnot tend to be our largest victim population, which is also where we're going through with our community policing based out of Penticton, doing educational pieces, teaching, explaining that if someone calls and says your grandson's been arrested in New York, not to send them funds to say, yes, we'll bail them out because that's not the situation and whatnot. So the majority of calls for service for the Summerland detachment continue to be non-criminal. Traffic incidences were the number one call for service, as they tend to be with the highway going through, especially with construction zones. We tend to field a number of calls for service for people not respecting the construction zones speeds or the single lanes. It's a lot of times, sometimes it'll be impaired driving complaints that are unfounded and turn out to be just someone who's late for work, so they're driving aggressively. Check well-being, again, with a bit of an aging population and people not being in contact with relatives and whatnot. We tend to do a few of those. And again, without going into a ton of the others, alarms, property disturbances tend to be the number one. Disturbances being someone yelling and screaming in the street, probably walking home from the pub or coming home after a party or whatnot. It's a broad spectrum. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Council, any questions? Councillor Peak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I was wondering, I know they've come down, but when I look at intimate partner violence, I'm wondering, are these things that are happening that are repeat within households? Do you work with social service to make referrals? Can you tell me a little bit more about it?
Yes, thank you, Councillor, through the mayor. Yes, although I can't speak specifically to this quarter on that, yes, that is a trend. And yes, we do work with community partners such as Ministry of Children and Family Development and whatnot. Our primary, our primary goal is protection of persons that are in jeopardy or whatnot, and so we seek to protect that. And then after those protections are put into place, we continue to work with with victims of intimate partner violence, and you see that they're either seeking shelter through various community partners such as Solins or whatnot in Penticton, and we do work with our own victim services to ensure that those avenues of support are provided. Thank you.
Councillor Chair.
I have three quick things. The first thing is in Penticton, I believe all of the school zones are now 30 kilometers, 24 hours a day. We don't have that in Summerland. We still have the 8 to 5. Do you think that that is something that we should look at in Summerland for Giants Head, the high school area, and then Trout Creek?
Thank you, Councillor, and through the mayor. No. I don't see there being a great advantage to reducing speed zones such as that down to 30, 24 hours a day. In Penticton, I don't know what the rationale was for that. I'm sure that they have a very strong and justified rationale. But having worked many night shifts in Summerland, I can tell you after about 6 o'clock, you can roll up the sidewalks in some places and you don't see anybody. So having that down to 30 kilometers an hour at 2 a.m. when most people are only driving 50 kilometers an hour through there anyways, it's not something that I can see a justification for or a need for.
Okay, thank you for that. That helps because when Penticton brought that in and Summerland didn't, a lot of people asked me why. So I appreciate your thoughts on that. That's very helpful. Okay, secondly, we have, you see it on Facebook all the time, problems with people stealing from the donation bins. We have quite a few thrift stores. And do you know who these people are? Is this something that you guys are working on as well with these nonprofits? Are you hearing about this too?
Again, thank you, Counselor, and through the mayor. Um, it's a difficult question to answer straight out, yes or no. Yes, we are aware of it. Yes, we tend to be aware of who they are. And they tend not to be property crime individuals. They tend to be people who are on hard times. And so first and foremost, public prosecution probably wouldn't be supported in such a case. Second, a donation bin is actually, it's a gray area and can be seen as more of a civil matter than a criminal, as it's not in the possession necessarily of the thrift store, and it's not in possession of the person who donated it anymore. Although somebody from the thrift store may argue that it is theirs because it's their donation bin, it's not necessarily in their capacity yet. So if a theft charge would be supported, again, is a gray area that I might speak to one prosecutor may say, yes, it is. One legal opinion from somebody else may say, no, it's not. So we have talked, I know that Constable Evans has spoken to a couple of the thrift store, I believe, Critter Aid, yeah, there you go. Critter Aid, and explain that to them and whatnot. And it's up to them at that point if they want to make donation boxes that slide through the back door into their property. And that point, it would become theirs and so forth.
Okay, thank you again for that. That helps. Okay, and my final question is, every so often it comes up about the hours of policing in Summerland, particularly overnight. Do you feel that, from your point of view, do we have good coverage? It's what I'm asking. And that might be a difficult question, but.
Thank you, Counselor, through the mayor. Yes, that is a very difficult question. To draw on my personal experience, I'm in my 24th year of police work. I've worked in 24-hour towns. I've worked in on-call towns. I've worked in specialized units and whatnot. Seeing 24-hour policing definitely would have its advantages. Absolutely. I don't think there's anybody that could ever really argue against it. You would have a police officer on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with permanent coverage, and response would be much quicker and much more viable. As far as the model that we're running now, I have to say that my professional opinion is it's what we can deliver given the circumstances and the size of the detachment. To say anything more, I would be much, much above my pay grade.
No, I appreciate your honesty there. I just wanted to know. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Peak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I forgot to ask because I've had probably 12 individuals be concerned about how fast traffic is traveling on Victoria Street, where the detour is on Prairie Valley. And they're concerned with the speed, and then the people that jump back to the side street to be able to bypass the detour. So I don't know whether that's an area that you've done any concentration for sitting and watching or catching people.
Thank you, Councillor, through the mayor. We usually see this kind of rise in complaints when there are detours. We saw it in Giants Head Road not too long ago when they had just got new pavement, and then when there was the slide and we had to see, people were being diverted through. We've done in the past targeted enforcement on Giants Head and Prairie Valley Road and Victoria Road South and whatnot. And we haven't found anything in the past, and I'm talking up to the last month or so, that suggests that traffic is flowing any faster. There may be an increase in volume, and with an increase in volume will come an increase of speeders. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that the ratio has increased. So if we see a 50% increase in speed or in volume, and 2% of those are speeders, then we may see, an additional 4 to 5% of people speeding. but we haven't seen anything that would cause us great concern. To circle back to directly answer your question, no, we haven't done anything specifically for Victoria Road South. We did do a concentration on Prairie Valley Road there for quite a while, but now that it's under construction, I'll take that into consideration where we deploy our resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Betts.
Thanks for your presentation. Just a quick question. If I'm correct, did I see that BC RCMP are rolling out the body cameras at this time? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Thank you, Councillor, through the mayor. Yes, we are. We are set in Summerland to be fit up in February. This is after a number, it's funny because we're having people saying, oh, that's happening so quickly, but this has been in process for a couple of years. We should be fit up in February for the detachment to receive the body cameras, chargers and whatnot. Then my members and as well as myself have to receive the training to download and retain and when and what privacy issues there are surrounding body worn cameras. So there's a lot to go there. So been in working for the federal government for a number of years. I know that if they say February, you tend to give them about 2 to 3 months leeway. So there could be hiccups, but I would expect to see us having them in here in Summerland by summer. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Councillor Peak.
Councillor Betts' questions brought to mind, and you may or may not know this, but in terms of budget, have we already covered the cost of those cameras in the current year's budget, or would they be going into the 2025 budget?
Thank you for the question, Councillor, through the mayor. I don't recall. I know that they are accounted for, but I can't remember which budget that they fall into. Sorry about that.
I can answer that if you would like. Just turn my video on. There we go. Through Councillor Peak, through the mayor to Councillor Peak, we have budgeted $18,000 for those cameras, and they are in the 2025 operational RCMP budget.
Thank you, Dave, very kindly.
Very well.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Barkwell.
I was very pleased to hear your answer about the 24-hour school zone, because that just seemed kind of pointless to me. It's not something an officer would want to enforce because I can just imagine pulling somebody over in the circumstances that you described. One of the issues with our stats being a small community for us is, the variability. When you only have a sample size of 5, percentage wise, it can look huge if you have 2 more or 2 less. But I see that the year-to-date stats are all really good as well. So that's to me more encouraging than the any single quarter. But I was wondering about the mischief to property. The absolute numbers are really high. How can we have so much mischief around town? Or does that include things that I might not think of? I think of mischief as being somebody spray painted the school, or what does that include, and why is that so high?
Thank you, Councillor, and through the mayor. There are a number of explanations for that. If we did have a number of spray paint incidents last quarter, and we did have some random acts that went unfortunately unsolved. But what also was included in the mischief would be anything that mischief comes down to anytime property is damaged, but also included in this stat is mischief, loss of enjoyment of property and whatnot. So sometimes we'll score, or as some people might understand it to be, coding an offense as mischief, loss of enjoyment of property if we have a constant noise complaint from somewhere, or if somebody calls in and says, my neighbors are partying, it's 1:30 in the morning and I'm trying to sleep. Well, therefore that person has lost enjoyment of the lawful enjoyment of their own property and being able to sleep or whatnot. It can also come down to nuisance properties being next door to certain places, and we have been concentrating on a number of nuisance properties. These stats could reflect those, although I'm not 100% sure that they do. I believe that to be part of it. Other might be damage, or, and we do experience at random acts of damage and whatnot. Sometimes hit and runs that might get scored as a damage to property, rather than then we find out afterwards that it was actually a hit and run when there was property damage and whatnot. So it is a little high. I don't disagree with you there. 31 incidents in the quarter, but again, that could come down to scoring. It is somewhat significant though, because if you look at quarter three of last year, it was 36. So, sorry, Councillor, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that helps explain that all the different things that it encompasses. Yeah.
Okay, I think we've run out of questions, so thank you very much, Corporal. Yeah. We'll move on to the fire department updates. Chief Robinson.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Councilor. Can't believe my counterparts didn't grow one of these mustaches, but I'll grab their $50 off of them after this meeting. I only have 5 more days to go. Quarter 3 stats for the fire department. Thanks for having me. On my first slide there, we had no ice this year, and so far it doesn't look like we're going to get any. So our team decided to improvise, and we did some ice water rescue in the pool. It still simulates ice, but it's a little warmer. And actually the crews liked it a lot better than ice. So that's my first slide for that. That's the capital money that you were graciously gave us this year. So that's part of the equipment that we purchased, and looking forward to using it. Well, not looking forward to using it, but if we have to, we will. Our next slide that we have is our incidents. Pretty much the same as last year at this time. 4 more calls this year. But however, we did have a busy summer with 102 calls. Last year we had 85, so we were busy this summer. And as I go into my next slide, you'll see on this slide here, we have some equipment that we're using called Paratech struts, and they secure a vehicle for us that so we can access patients, victims, or get some of their essential stuff out of the vehicles. So as I move into my next slide, you'll see that this is part of the training that we do, and we happen to be sending under the bold letters, you'll see specialized training, and we sent 4 firefighters to Kamloops just before this call, actually. So actually there was 2 members on the call that happened to be taking the specialized training, and they bring back training knowledge and share information for the rest of the firefighters. So it's crucial that we take these kind of courses. This is called stabilization, but when we use that kind of equipment, we also are learning how to lift things with them. We're also doing shoring in case we need to do that. And it's basically the same equipment that we've purchased over the last 10 to 15 years. Under that bold category of specialized training, we also sent 2 firefighters to live fire event in Penticton. Not only did they learn about fires, but how to conduct themselves as a fire team leader. So that was important for our couple members to understand how we do what we do in fires. Our Deputy Chief, Pat Hawks, continues to do a great job as training officer. He continually finds events like this, keeping up our firefighters engaged in new opportunities, as well as keeping them busy on our regular Wednesday night training, which we are 12 more events than last year at this time. Our next slide is pretty boring, which is good. We didn't have any open burning in July and September. It was rather dry out, so I'm glad we don't do that. And then to my next slide is our inspections. Our property inspections are consistent with previous years. Not much difference in the last couple of years with these numbers. our team does a great job. Our inspectors and our public education team continue to do a great job educating kids in our schools as well as seniors throughout the year and other events. We are up to 5 more events than last year at this time. And in October here, was our fire prevention month, and we were busy at all the schools as well as with kids coming to fire stations and learning about fire safety. And that's the rest of my slides. Sorry, I was supposed to go to that one there. So again, with the public education, just 5 more events, like I said. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Council questions, Councillor Betts.
Thanks for your presentation, Rob. Quick question about the fire department incidents. So I see fire alarms. I mean, anywhere from 7 to 11 in any given month. September, there was only 4, but in the year to date, there's 56. Are those attended fire alarms?
Thank you, Councillor. Through the mayor, yes, those are all fire alarms that we received, either residential or commercial. We have been getting a lot of, not to not tell us, but we have been getting a lot of people uneducated about their fire alarm systems. So we have to make sure that if they're going to work with them, use them at all, go near them, touch them kind of thing, is they want to call their service provider and make sure that they take it offline while they change the batteries out or whatever they're doing to them, painting around them, whatever they're doing.
So with these call outs, are our volunteer firefighters attending these calls?
Thank you again, Councillor, through the mayor. Yes, they are attending these calls. Yeah.
Can you tell me typically how many members?
Oh, not off the top of my head. If you wanted a real number, I could give it to you, but I would say anywhere. So we have 30 paid on calls, but I would say probably 15 at the average show up to these calls. Not everyone's around all the time.
And does everybody who respond get paid for responding to the call?
Yes, they do.
So far this year, we've got 56 fire alarms and 15 people showing up for their minimum allotted, and they'll all be paid out as predetermined. It just seems like that's an area where we could maybe improve our communication with our residents. You know, just as an idea, because it's costing all taxpayers quite a lot of money to have false alarms, which is generally a waste of people's time, unfortunately, when there's so many serious things that do happen. But yeah, I'm not sure how to approach that, but I feel like maybe improved communication from us, maybe in the newsletter, just reminding people to become educated on their fire alarm systems, because it does come at a cost. It seems like the fire department is free. It's a free service, but it's not. We all pay for it, right? So it's just a perspective thing. I think encouraging people's accountability and responsibility from time to time, just through an education angle, is always it's a good thing.
Thank you. Yes, it can be something we can work at for sure. We also have to remember that we have to be careful not to be complacent when we get these calls as our firefighters. Have been on calls where you think it's nothing, and then it is something. So we make sure that we're at our best anytime it is of those 56 calls.
Yeah.
Yes, just for clarification though, if there was actually a fire, it would go under a different category.
Thank you, Councillor, again, through the mayor. Yes, it would go under, if there was a fire, it would be under dollar loss, or yeah, it would be under dollar loss fire.
Right, so yeah, because there's a whole bunch of different categories of what types of fire. So it would seem then to me that there are 56 call outs so far this year that are in response to alarms going off that were not in any way an emergent situation. Because those other emergent situations are line items. So I'm thankful and in full gratitude of our fire department responding to people. This isn't a fire department issue, but it is that people's fire alarms calling for assistance is costing everybody money. That's what I'm looking at. And that's what I'm seeing, that there's a disconnect here.
That is correct.
Well said. Mr. Dolbert?
Yeah, just for council's awareness, we do have the ability in our fees and charges bylaw for, typically it's for repeat offenders. that we're typically always calling for fire alarms. We call them nuisance abatement fees for any calls, whether it's RCMP, bylaw enforcement, or the fire department, to charge a nuisance abatement fee to that property. So we have done that in our past. We usually need to track to ensure that it's the same individual. Then we manage it through our bylaw enforcement department in communication with RCMP and the fire department.
Yeah, Councillor Betts.
So to follow up with that, how is that initiated? Is it after every single fire alarm that is responded to that is not an emergent situation? Does that automatically get triggered to development services?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Betts, it's usually, again, for tracking repeated false alarms coming from the same property. And if there's a trend for that specific property, then usually there's a conversation that occurs with the fire department to our bylaw enforcement team saying like this property is one we continually have to be called out to because of repeated false alarms. So that's usually when we have the ability to place that fee.
Don't know if education would help those people. I think what you're talking about is people who just don't really know their system, right? Maybe. Chief Robbins.
Okay, if I could follow up with that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Brad. Every time we go there, myself and the rest of the full-time staff try to educate the customer that what I just finished saying about trying to get them to make sure that we educate them, so to speak, on trying, and we don't have that many repeat offenders, to be honest with you. There is one or two, but not that many. But we try to educate them to make sure they understand. Anytime they're going near that smoke alarm or their panel is to call the monitoring company that they use and take it offline.
And I guess it varies between systems too. I know the system we used to have here in Miss Hall was, I probably triggered that thing a couple of times myself. It was so bad, but now it's fine, right? So I think depends on the system people have. Okay, any other questions, Councillor Peak?
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Mayor. When I look at it's the stat on the number 2 presentation slide, it talks about electrical mechanical failure, and then it has fire electrical. Can you tell me what the difference is between the two of them?
Thank you, Councillor, through the mayor. The fire electrical is when there's actually a fire and electrical component. So it might be, a fire might be causing an electrical panel or a fire at a plug-in or something like that. Whereas the fire electrical is generally a power line that we come to that's down on a line and we get called to something like that. So it's tree on a power line, something to do with that, where there's not actually a fire, but it's a mechanical failure fire, or it could be, yeah, I'll leave it at that. It's probably the best way to explain it.
If I may, could you tell me about natural gas leaks? Are there particular causes? Are there repeatable kind of causes? Is there a common denominator?
Thank you, Councillor, through the mayor again. Yes, it's unfortunate we get the odd excavator. That's what those are, pulling up gas lines. And so that's what that is. Or it could be, I guess that's one of them, but also there is natural gas leaks in people's houses that we go to. Like a hot water tank is leaking or a furnace is leaking.
And if I may, Rob, my last question would be about response investigations. Can you tell me what that is?
You had to ask me about that one. Thank you, Councillor, through the mayor. That's a whole lot of everything. Those are the ones that we don't fit into anywhere else. So it could be someone calling about dust. Like someone lives far away and they figure they see smoke. We've had calls, barbecue, people calling for barbecues. We get called to that. We get called to campfires that are no problems. We get calls to campfires that are propane that the people think, like during the summer months, we get calls that people are having propane fires, and you're allowed to have propane fires. So we get a couple of those a year as well too. So that's what that category is there.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your report.
You're welcome. I did forget to mention on that, if I could, is that, and I know Michael, BC Ambulance Service pointed out, and I thought I would point it out on this slide here, is that we do ambulance assists. So when they're on scene, they call us and we do some of the heavy lifting. But again, we don't do provide medical response. So if someone's having one of those purple, oranges, yellows, we don't respond to those. If BC Ambulance calls us to come and help and they're on scene to lift them, we will do that for sure. We support them 100%. Thank you.
And motor vehicle accidents outside our municipal boundaries, do we get reimbursed for that? How does that work?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we get through the province, EMCR, I can't remember the exact number, but per hour and then every 15 minutes after that, we get a certain wage for that, for reimbursement. Yes. If we have to use the jaws of life, we get reimbursed for that as well too. Over the bank, we get reimbursed for that as well too. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, don't see any other questions. Thanks very much. See you next quarter. That's right. I wasn't gonna say, I didn't even notice, but. Okay, on to 9.4 dog license fees, Mr. Delpit.
Thank you, Worship. In an effort to maintain balance with the district's municipal fee structure system, we have completed a review of our dog license fee charges for the municipality. We provided in my staff report to council a table of our current dog license fees and how they compare to other local governments in the interior. In comparison to these other local governments, our current dog license fees for neutered or spayed dogs are almost exactly on average currently, with a charge of $30 per license. But intact animal fees are currently below the average of other local governments. In addition, staff has felt that the District of Summerland has made a substantial amount of investment to support dog owners in recent years, including the construction of 2 featured new dog parks, one at Pete Georgia Dog Park and the other at the Dale Meadows Sports Complex. In addition, these dog facilities have also been associated with increased operational impact to our bylaw enforcement staff, as well as with parks maintenance. And it's for these reasons that we, at the staff level at least, that dog owners should be more responsible for that budgetary increase versus the general taxation. For those reasons, staff are recommending to council that we consider an across-the-board increase of $10 per dog license to be $40 for spayed or neutered and $70 for intact dogs. This proposed rate increase would put the district among the higher range for municipalities for dog license fees charges for the interior, but on average for intact dogs. So higher for spayed or neutered, but on average for intact. And lastly, before I take any questions, I do want to make a correction with my staff report. It states in the report that we didn't review licenses since 2017. That was not correct. We did review this in 2022, so 2 years ago. We did increase our dog license fees at that point in time from $20 to $30, and from that was for spayed or neutered, and from $40 to $60 for intact animals. And I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Betts. Sorry, I thought your hand was up. Councillor Trainer.
Not really a question, so we don't have a motion on the table yet. But what happens if we just did $5? Like, so we went to 35 and 65. Considering we did do a raise, and I know we did a raise in 2022 to bring us more in line, which I think was the right thing to do. given that everything's going up right now, I'm wondering if a $5 raise would be more fair for all of our residents. I don't know what council thinks about that. And then that would put us at the same with Penticton for neutered or spayed dogs, and then $5 below Penticton. I'm not saying that we need to compare to Penticton or compete or compare, but that's where we would be with them.
Councillor Peak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I would prefer to leave the spayed and neutered at $30. I really want to encourage people to get their dogs spayed. Then we're just not proliferating. I would go with a $10 raise on the, whatever they're called. Intact, what a strange word, intact. So that's what I would prefer to do. I don't like to tie the cost of licenses to anything to do with the fact of establishing dog parks, because I think we establish all kinds of things for service for our community. So that doesn't really track for me. It may track somewhat in terms of the costs or the kinds of call out we get for bylaw or the call outs we get to the people we employ to look after the patrolling the parks and that contract. But I just don't see the tie-in on establishing dog parks. So I would prefer to reinforce people getting dogs neutered and spayed and do the increase on only the one side.
Well, I would suggest we do just go the same as Penticton. It's just increase, so basically split the difference between what two of you are saying here. Have the spayed neuter up $5 and the intact up 10, and that way we're encouraging to get spayed and neutered, and we're on the same level. The problem is if you don't increase it, if you just increase it $5 or don't increase it at all, we'll just end up falling further behind, and we're going to have to revisit this all again next year because everybody else has increased theirs. I think that's a fair balance, and really, and I concur with what Councillor Peak was saying, that the dog parks doesn't really have anything to do with it. It's the cost of dog control and everything like that. And when you consider we have the same dog control people as Penticton does, it would make sense that our licenses are the same as theirs. So that's my school of thought. Councillor Betts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think one of the pieces of correspondence that we received spoke to the idea of having a separate fund for the fees that come in that are generated from specifically dog licenses, to be able to track kind of where the spending goes. And I bring it up because on the one side, it came across as a reasonable suggestion, but that's not how recreation works. We choose to make investments into our entire community. And so sometimes, we put more money into skating rinks or swimming pools, or, we have the skate park. So I thought about indoor amenities and outdoor amenities. Well, we don't ask people to pay to go to the skate park, but that's mostly for children. Well, what about all of our multi-use pathways and our sidewalks? Well, that's for everyone. So I've been really just trying to dig into kind of more the philosophy behind this need, or to try and have the separate fund. But for me, I think at the end of the day, if we tie dog licensing costs more so to our operational costs of having to have increased dog waste removal, increased services at those locations. We chose a capital investment. Council chose a capital investment to put the fencing in. So that was a council decision. I don't think that individual user needs to individually pay for that. But the operational cost of those increased services, as well as what the dog service contract actually costs, which was, I think, a big surprise at budget time last year, at least to me. That's where I can see the validity, because that contractual increase happened. And so then the dog the dog license fee should then accordingly be increased.
Okay, Counselor Barkwell.
UBCM, there was just to add another wrinkle to this, there was a program about having your dog chipped, now that you have to have a chip in your dog to take it to the US. So I thought, well, this is really becoming more and more of a thing. But, so I asked our CAO about it and staff did up sort of a report. And I think about it, I just couldn't think of why the district might offer a discount for, say, having your dog chipped. It just doesn't seem to be an advantage to the district itself. It's an advantage to pet owners to help ensure the recovery of their dog, but and that's why people do it, but that's not our responsibility. I don't understand that we have any particular problem in identification of stray dogs. So I'll drop that idea, and I would support Mayor Holmes with his compromise fee proposal.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering about the chipping as well, because more and more municipalities are moving to have, like in Vancouver, for example, your dog has to be chipped, or else you don't get a license at all. And more urban centers are moving that way. I'm not really sure, as you were saying, what the benefit is to the municipality of doing that. It's more for the pet owner, but anyway, Councilor Turner.
I'll put a motion on the table so that we increase the intact to 70 and the neutered spayed to 35.
Second, Councilor Barkwell. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? And none opposed. Oh, one opposed. Okay, Councilor Peak opposed. That carries. Moving on to items removed from the consent agenda, development service report, Councilor Barkwell. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I skipped one here. Sorry, my Parks Regulation Amendment bylaw. That's who's taking that then? The corporate officer.
Thank you, Mayor Holmes. So on September 24th, there was an adoption of the Parks Regulation Amendment bylaw. And following the adoption, it was noticed that there was an administrative error with the amendment bylaw, which did not update the corrected text of section 6C to formally remove Peach Orchard Beach Park from a list of locations that permit off-leash dogs during the off-season, so from October to May. Although the staff report correctly highlighted the change, as did the red line version of the Parks Regulation bylaw, the bylaw does need to be considered formally, an amendment bylaw does need to be considered formally to incorporate the correct language. So therefore, we are recommending that Parks Regulation Amendment bylaw number 2024-037 be given for second and third reading.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Peak. Okay, second, Councilor Betts. Any discussion? Just another conspiracy? I'll call it. You have something to say, Councilor Barkwell?
So this amendment is to Peach Orchard Beach is on leash for other than the dog park area all year. Yeah, so I was opposed to that. I thought that was a pointless change that we made to the regulations at the time. So I'll get another chance to voice my opposition to it.
Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Councilor Barkwell's opposed. That carries. Now moving on to the development service report, 4.5. Councilor Barkwell.
Thank you. I just wanted to have this report pulled. I've gone through it, but always more illuminating is sort of a verbal update to some of these things from Director of Development Services, such as, has there been any movement, say, on the police station site or any other things you can update us on informally, or if there's any questions people have for specific projects on the list?
Through the chair to Councilor Barkwell. So specifically with that property, the old RCMP site on Jubilee Road, unfortunately, that building permit we had available for pickup for almost a full year. And the developer never picked up the building permit and therefore it expired. We have heard though that the developer and they've come in to get their old plans to make a revised submission. So they do still intend on moving forward with that project, but it just would have to go through another building permit process, unfortunately. But definitely, I think that's a good example of the market conditions. I think it was difficult in terms of their situation to get pre-sales in place to move forward with that project. But I'm happy to take questions on any other applications.
Councillor Peak.
I appreciate the update in that one because it was a question I had in my mind as well, Councillor Barkwell. I've had people ask me, and I have no idea, the Circle K property with the gas station, they have a permit for something and it seems to be taking a long time. I'm not even sure what the permit's for. Can you give me some idea?
Through your worship, to Councillor Peak, honestly, they don't have a building permit out for us. I think that is primarily an electrical service upgrade. So it's probably most likely related to those EV charges they've been storing in the back of their business there. So it has nothing to do with the building or the planning department.
Excellent. And if I may, Mr. Mayor, I make note of the fact you have a casual person on staff that we didn't have, and I'm wondering how that person is working out.
Through your worship, to Councillor Peak. Yeah, we actually have had a couple senior building officials join us intermittently with their schedules because they have other priorities as well. But I mentioned Danny at our last meeting, but even Danny's been away the last few weeks. So we had Ken Kunka, formerly from the city of Penticton, also in helping us with complex building permit files. And it's been great to having them both in our office because we do need that senior level building official review for a lot of the projects that are happening in our community right now. So they've been great resources and hoping we can continue that as a casual support to our department moving forward for a little bit.
So the other one I was interested in is the hotel and the apartment building off of Rosedale or Rose, yeah.
Sure. Through your worship, to Councillor Peak. The priority for that proponent is the apartment building first before the hotel. That is the focus for that as a first phase. And they are working towards getting their building permit issued. We currently have it in process right now. Still some requirements for the offsites, I think, to be discussed and confirmed for that project. But their timing, I think, is to start construction next spring is their plan.
Thank you very kindly. Appreciate that.
Councillor Barkle.
Yeah, thank you. I was interested in how that one was coming along as well. I see on the list there's two permits out for 9800 Turner Street. There's DP 21-18, and then there's one at the top of the list, DP 9800. Are they two different projects for that development in there?
Your worship, to Councillor Barkwell. Yeah, some of these have been on hold for quite a while. This is a great example. I do want to move forward with potentially canceling some of these applications because they've been on hold for multiple years. That's a great example. That one at 9800 Turner Street. There was a rezoning and a DP associated with the project a number of years ago, but it hasn't been really active in the last couple of years, so most likely should be canceled.
Is that the address where we turn down the development of multifamily buildings instead of like the rest of the, yeah.
That's
so I sort of wondered why they're still there and why there's two of them. There's the DVP 2127 and the other one, DVP 2117.
Yeah, I think it was just the way those applications came in. They were submitted as two separate applications. One was a variance application, the other was a form and character development permit. Normally, in that type of situation, we combined it into one DP, but it was just submitted as two separate applications to our department and just never really advanced further than I think the preliminary stages of those applications, unfortunately.
You good?
Yeah. I see one's a DVP and one's a DP, so they are two different things, yeah.
I just want to ask about the short-term rentals. So it says 10 listings have been escalated for removal to the province's compliance unit. How does that how does that process work then? How long does that take before the province actually acts? Or what does the province do? How does it remove it?
Yeah, good question, Mayor. Darren Krell, our bylaw officer, usually is the one reporting to the province. He has access to the provincial registry system. Anecdotally, from what I hear from him, it's the province is pretty quick at removing listings if they receive an indication from us that they're operating outside the scope of their maybe the previously issued license. Or maybe they don't have a license. There's an advertisement that's gone up that doesn't have a District of Summerland license. There's a reporting functionality in the software that we have access to at the local government level to report these listings to the province, and they are fairly quick to remove them. And the thought process, I think, from the province's side is that once everything's kind of completed with us, we're okay. They could easily resubmit. That's why we're able to get fairly good compliance, is because of how efficient the province is also being with removing of these listings.
So 100% compliance means that every short-term rental in the district is licensed, and there's no unlicensed one.
That's correct. At least those that are being advertised. Yeah.
So basically, there's currently 83, 85, 2 waiting, 85. And so about half of those 72 unlicensed ones are now licensed, and the other half, roughly, are no longer renting at short term. Is that how I'm reading this correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, that's great. Okay, Councillor Peak?
Do we need a motion to receive this then, since
We do, yeah. And maybe in the future, we should probably just put this in the regular agenda since we pull it out every time, eh? So,
Yeah, let's do that.
okay, so a motion to receive, Councillor Peak, yeah. A second, Councillor Barkwell, all in favor? That carries. So now we have a couple of business rising reports. Rising report, corporate officer.
Thank you, Mayor Holmes. So the first one, 13.1, at the September 24th, 2024 closed session, council passed the resolution that is on the screen. We'll just get Steve to put it up regarding the intergovernmental memorandum of understanding between local governments and the Silk Okanagan Nation. As the agreement has been signed by all parties and is now public, the resolution is no longer considered sensitive and can be released from in camera.
Yeah, this is the one I spoke about in my report. Councillor Barkle?
I'll move the motion as presented in the agenda.
It's just, we've already passed it. Yeah, it's just for a rise to report for information.
They'll just need so the motion would be that council rise and report on the following resolution.
Oh,
And then
okay.
I think this one's just missing that first.
All right, okay, so we're taking it out of close. Councillor Barkle, second. Councillor Trainer, all in favor? And that carries. If we voted against, it doesn't make any sense because it's already out. So anyway. 13.2.
Thank you again, Mayor Holmes. So committee of the whole meetings occur when council in its entirety sits as a committee to consider items in more detail and reports its findings and recommendations to the governing body. These findings and recommendations are referred to council for approval. So at the October 30th and 31st, 2024 committee of the whole meetings, council and committee passed the following resolutions, which are on the screen, just very hard to see, regarding the proposed 2025 utility operating and capital budgets. So this resolution again is just missing that first part that council confirmed the following resolutions.
Councillor Peak,
I'll bring that forward for confirmation.
second. Councillor Betts, any discussion? This was our whole budget discussion. Councillor Betts?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a reminder to our residents that the presentation is currently available for watching on the proposed rate hikes, and that's on the District of Summerland YouTube right now, led by the Director of Finance, Dave Svetlichny.
Yeah, we're still taking feedback. Councillor Barkle? Right, okay. Councillor Peak?
Where I've been talking to groups of people about the utility, because people do talk about why are the increases and whatever. I've been emphasizing the kinds of costs that have gone up, but also the fact that we took a relief from not having reserves set up, and we feel that reserves are really important in terms of reducing the amount of borrowing we will do in the future. And that's a good planning feature when you're looking after a corporation. So I've been sort of doing an education thing when I'm talking to people about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor? And none opposed. That carries. And now motion to adjourn. And we skipped council reports. It's not even. It's not on my agenda. Councillor Trainer.
I attended the Okanagan Library Board meeting last Wednesday, and there's a grant that the library board is using up. It was about $1.5 million, the Provincial Enhancement Grant Fund for public libraries. And so half of that's already been spent, but they had about $600,000 to still spend. So Summerland is getting $25,000 to replace the HVAC system and redesign the roof drainage on our library. The HVAC system did not perform properly this summer, and so the library really struggled with that. And then the design of the roof, it results in water pooling in two corners, which then drains down and freezes on the sidewalk. And so they need to just install some new gutters along there to fix that problem. So we're getting $25,000, give or take, to fix those problems this year. And then also, I was talking to our librarian, Carolyn, and she said that in October, 13,000 books were reshelved in Summerland. And normally it's between 5,000 and 6,000. So she said something's going on, like people are reading more books, but it just goes to show that our library is very well used and it increases all the time. So I just wanted to give a shout out to her because she does an awesome job. And yeah, that's it.
I'd like to know what's going on.
I don't want to get marked.
Councillor Peak. Peak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to commend the community on the Remembrance Day ceremony as well. I wanted to thank the Legion and the cadets for the work they do to make that a commemorative event. And the fact that our community turned out in amazing numbers and made it a real event. It was a wonderful day for remembrance, and I think it's important for our community. We like our banner program. The remembrances that go up on the street and the banners is important as well. And I wanted to comment, as the mayor did, on the Memory Cafe. We had members from the Arts Council that went to that discussion, and they are indeed interested in promoting more things that will help that, and they would wish to continue in that discussion for a Memory Cafe. And I would also like to commend the Arts Council for the delivery of the program that we asked them to do, which is a banner program for the seasonal banners. And they had a wonderful little reception with that honored the the people that had created the banners, and we had a preponderance of young people that created banners, and now they're up on the streets and they're absolutely wonderful. So I want to commend everyone on that and to the artists themselves. The kids were thrilled that they got an honorarium. I spoke to some students later who wished they'd have competed as well because they thought they didn't realize they might get some money out of it. So, if we do it another time, they'll get even more interested. So good for council and good for the Arts Council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barkwell.
On Saturday, I attended the Trail of the Okanagan AGM. And as you probably know, it's going to be coming through Summerland, and we have to do our part to see that our section is completed sooner or later. It's in our active transportation plan, and I guess I've gone after attending that meeting thinking, well, it seems like a good idea to say, wow, they've done a fantastic job. It's just amazing what they've been able to accomplish towards what I thought was an insurmountable sort of a task of building a trail from the Salmon Arm down to Vesuvius, but it's coming together and it's just going to be an amazing, great project when it's finished.
Yeah. Anyone else? No? Okay, motion to adjourn, please. Councillor Betts, Councillor Peak.